And I call the member for Gorton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. A former member of this place, Pete Steedman, passed away on the 10th of July. He was 80 years old. In 1983, Pete was elected as member for Casey and was part of the first Hawke government that sat in the old Parliament House. As I missed the opportunity to speak on his condolence motion, I wanted to record my sympathies and sincere condolences to his family and to his many friends. I also wanted to place on Hansard his achievements. Deputy Speaker, I was fortunate to attend and speak at a large gathering at Victorian Trades Hall on Saturday, September the 7th, to celebrate his life. On the day, I reflected upon the influence Pete had upon people around him, upon the Labor movement and the Labor Party, but his political activism started well before arriving in Canberra. In fact, he was first known for being editor of Monash University's student newspaper, Lot's Wife, in the mid-1960s. That's right. A couple of alumni here. This was, of course, during the early days of Monash University and during the emergence of social movements and growing opposition to the then Vietnam War. So whether it was protesting against conscription for young men or fighting Indigenous land rights, Pete was at the forefront of many of these social movements, these activities. At Trades Hall in September, a senior cabinet minister in the Hawke and Keating governments, Gareth Evans, was in attendance too, and he recounted his success in convincing Pete to move to the University of Melbourne and become editor of its student newspaper, Farrago. So he had the Quinella, the only person to hold the editorial roles of both universities. And later on, of course, he became managing editor of Oz magazine, that was subject to the prosecution in London for what was then seen to be obscenities. It's a good reminder about how repressive things were back in those days. Yep. And these experiences sharpened Pete's journalistic and political skills, which he used so effectively for the rest of his life. But, Deputy Speaker, he was a victim of the fickle fate of politics, losing the 1984 election, owing in particular to a brutal redistribution of his seat. And he then moved on to assist the Municipal Employees Union, where I got to know him relatively well, and he was really an important conduit for the union to engage with the federal government. And at a time we had just won a work value case for home carers, but we needed Commonwealth funding, and I managed at the age of 25 to meet Paul Keating through the efforts of Pete Steedman in the old Parliament House in 1987, which was a great bonus for the members of that union, the home care workers who were being paid so little. And again, echoes of what we do now: increase and improve wages for low-paid workers and then make sure the Commonwealth funds them, and that's what exactly Keating did, but it was in large part due to Pete Steedman's advocacy, which I won't forget. Well, you know, some of the best parties that were ever conducted in my lifetime were, of course, held at his place in Hurstbridge, which he had purchased off David Williamson, the playwright. And we used to have these Guy Fawkes days where 60 up to 100 people would turn up, starting at lunchtime, culminating in a bonfire and fireworks display, and there'd be an effigy. And the effigy was never representative of Guy Fawkes. It was always a political rival that had crossed Pete that year. So they were remarkable days. We had wonderful time with Pete and with Julie and his family. So, Deputy Speaker, it was a sad day when Pete passed, but he had a glorious life. And he did some remarkable things, including establishing Oz Music to cultivate and promote and elevate local Australian music. Yep. And every November it is Oz Music Month, and we can thank Pete Steedman and others for ensuring that. He got together the musicians and the strategic minds of Michael Gudinski and really elevated that. Pete was a remarkable character. We broke the mould but he will be always remembered as a decent, remarkable Labor man.